Hello everyone and welcome back to the Chef One podcast. Now before we jump into the breaking news that Yuki Tsunoda has replaced Liam Lawson at Red Bull, we've got some housekeeping to do, but I promise this one is very, very interesting. Now if you follow our TikTok, you may have seen that we have started a website, and that is one that we'd like you to be a part of. So right now we are just sort of doing this podcast between the three of us, but we are looking for people to write for the Chef One website. So if you are maybe an aspiring motorsport journalist or just someone with a keen interest in F1 with very few people to talk about it with, then do fill out this Google form. We'll leave a link to it in the description of this video. Leave us your name, your email, your contact details, whatever. And if you want to be a part of the Chef One team, write for us on the Chef One website, which will also be linked down below. Then yeah, get in contact. We'll get in touch very soon. Okay, now that's out the way, let's delve into the very exciting news that Liam Lawson has been replaced by Yuki Tsunoda at Red Bull. Of course, Lawson also going back down to V-Carb as a demotion after just 2 races in the Red Bull seat. Of course, generating lots of controversy ever since they announced Lawson in there in the first place. A lot of people happy to see this move happen. A few people also a little bit annoyed about it as well. Seb, what is your just first takeaway from this announcement?
First takeaway is I'm super excited for Yuki. I think that's the main thing I'm thinking about this, and obviously feeling a bit bad for Liam. Obviously, it's not a situation he would have wanted to be in. He has walked away from this with quite a lot of egg on his face after all the talk going into it. You know, he doesn't want to make friends. So I do feel bad for him, but yeah, mostly I'm just excited for Yuki. I think this is the opportunity I think a lot of us thought he was never going to get. The opportunity to really make himself an established driver at Red Bull, and he's got a perfect opportunity to establish himself at one of the top teams, one of the most successful teams in F1 history. It's not an opportunity that many drivers get, and he's got it. And yeah, obviously there's a little bit of skepticism going into it because we know how difficult that Red Bull seat could be and how it could potentially maybe destroy his career. But at the same time, I think he's got to look at it as just a golden opportunity, and that's how I'm looking at it for him. I think this is the opportunity to make his career. Essentially, he could. It's so exciting for him. He could go on and win world championships now, and he's got that opportunity. He's in the car. And obviously, at the moment, it's not a car that's probably capable of doing that. But going into 2026 onwards, we know how Red Bull are in F1. So yeah, first reaction is super excited for Yuki. Obviously, a little bit worried in the back of my head, but mostly just really excited to see how it gets on.
Yeah, we thought we'd had enough of the breaking news sort of F1 posts from last season, but we're now just 2 races into this one, and already a move that has completely changed the game of the driver market, I would say. Amy, 2 races, is that enough for Red Bull to make such a huge decision for Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda?
I mean, my whole opinion from the very start of the season has been it shouldn't have even been like this in the first place. So I think it's just redoing a wrong that Red Bull have done. But 2 races, I mean, I was watching Craig Slater on Sky Sports News this morning, and he was speaking about how much Liam has lost his confidence in the space of 2 weekends. And that's crazy to me. And they were very hard weekends as well. The wet in Australia, China, 2 tracks he's never raced on before. So there was huge expectations, but for him to lose confidence, he said it's almost like a duty of care that they've done, Red Bull, swapping the drivers because of how mentally low Liam was feeling, and therefore they've swapped the 2 of them. I don't know if this is going to benefit Liam more than Yuki. Even though I'm happy about this decision, I'm worried that they've made Yuki the scapegoat now instead of Liam, because I don't know, maybe they have more trust in Liam's career and don't want to push him too hard like they did with Alex Albon, like they did with Pierre Gasly, and luckily them drivers have been able to come back from that. But yeah, I think it's the right amount of time. I think they could have waited and waited. I don't think we were going to see an improvement, but I think there is something seriously wrong with that car, and it's exposed Red Bull for exactly who they are, a one-man team where they focus on Max Verstappen, because if any team had a Max Verstappen, they'd want to do the same. But what happens if Verstappen leaves? That car is totally messed up for any other driver who wants to take over the team and become the first driver after Verstappen. Verstappen's not going to be there forever. So, yeah, it's exposed Red Bull. It's shown how they were so stupid before the season went ahead to even have this lineup, and it's shown how behind the scenes I think it's a very troubled team, and I think ultimately that'll be what cost them, the constructors, this year as well as last year.
Yeah, not a lot of ignorance on Red Bull's part, I would say. It certainly shows how much they value that main team in comparison to VCarb. Because you look at Nick de Vries's form, which feels like an age ago now, considering how many drivers they've had since. But if you look at, what was happening with Nick de Vries, they gave him a long time, a really, really long time. Because I think they were listening to the people saying, come on, this is, 11 races they initially gave him. It's like, that's still not enough time. Never mind 2. You know what I mean? So, as soon as the main team starts to crumble a bit, I mean, even though Perez's performances were not up to standard by the end of his time at Red Bull, they still kept him on, kept him right through to the end of the season, possibly the end of his career. But of course, with new teams entering the grid, that could be subject to change. But yeah, look, I mean, it's a bit of a win-lose for both drivers, this swap, I'd say. You brought up the car. And that Red Bull car does not look easy to drive. So it's not going to be plain sailing for Yuki Tsunoda, I don't think. Surely they'll be more patient with him than they were with Lawson, because in terms of that backup now, like you said, Seb, Yuki was sort of the scapegoat in this situation. Now they really don't have one. I think it's way too early to promote Hadjar, who has had a really, really impressive start, to be fair. If we ignore that accident, at the start of the Australian Grand Prix, he's looked really, really competent over one lap, and that's a really, really good sign that he could develop into someone pretty useful for the team, especially if Tsunoda does decide to jump ship or they do kick him out of the team. But I think it's way too early to give that gamble on Hadjar just yet. But it is a bit of a win-lose, like I said, because that VCarb is pretty quick and does look pretty easy to drive. It goes to show that how easy Hadjar has found it in qualifying situations, putting in some really decent laps. He made it into Q3 at China, am I not mistaken? Or
ahead of Yuki Tsunoda.
Ahead of Tsunoda. So yeah, really, really strong start for him in a car that does look pretty competitive in that midfield. Meanwhile, the Red Bull, okay, Max Verstappen is doing absolutely fine, but even when he's driving it, it doesn't look like an easy car to drive at all. I mean, Liam Lawson in Australia had a different front wing to Verstappen, had no front end grip. So they've just not been patient with him at all. I mean, that sort of goes without saying, really. But Seb, I mean, was this move sort of inevitable at some point this season, do you think, just given the state of Red Bull's car now?
I think maybe there was an air of inevitability about it. Just because of, we know how difficult it is to drive that second seat. And I think when you actually look at it, I think maybe it was a bit naive of everybody to not expect Liam to struggle as much as he had.
Absolutely.
Because he had, 11 races under his belt or 13 or something like that under his belt before he got the seat. That is no experience at all. And you look at Albon and Gasly before they came into seat. Yeah, Albon had a similar amount of experience, but he was in the middle of a season. He had the confidence of performing well at Toro Rosso, and Pierre had already had a full season under his belt, and they struggled. So why was there this expectancy that Liam was going to come in and perform straight away? I think, about them saying it's a duty of care for Liam, I think that's actually, even though it sounds a bit weirdly phrased, I do think it actually is quite a good decision in that point of view, because in terms of protecting his career, if he had continued to perform at Red Bull and been finishing P20, in qualifying sessions for, the next 4 or 5 Grand Prix, that might have completely ruined his career and his chances of ever going somewhere else. Whereas if he can go back to RB now and just, build experience once again and get some good results under his belt, I think people will forget this. And I think people also look at the fact that because they promoted him so early in his career, so rashly maybe, that I think people will in, a few years' time, a year or 2 time, I think they will maybe forget about this little period and maybe be able to move on from it if he can perform consistently at RB. So I think for Liam, I think even in the short term, he's going to be embarrassing. He's going to be able to, it'll be a bit of a struggle to get back into the rhythm at RB. I think it is a good decision for his career. And for Yuki, I do think ultimately it's this is a bit weird, but my mum said to me he should turn it down because, it may be unfair on him. But I think he has to take it, and obviously, he contractually probably had to take it anyway. But I think for him, he has to take it just because this is an opportunity he might never get. And also, even though there's obviously the negative that the car is difficult to drive, I think going forward, that seat is a better seat than the RB. For 2026 onwards, if he can basically survive, I think that's his job for the rest of the season now, is survive in that seat. Make sure he can get that seat for 2026. And, he's not going to be expected to be on the level of Max. No one is. But if he can just replicate the form he was showing at RB, even if it's basically in and around where the RBs are finishing, that's better than obviously what Liam was doing, so he can't do worse than Liam. I think he's in a not that bad of a situation. I don't think he's going to be coming P20 in every qualifying session. I think he's more experienced. I think he should be able to deal with that. And also, even if he does, Well, because Liam struggled so badly, I think it sort of lets Yuki off the hook a little bit. And yes, his future with Red Bull would be over. But I think because of what he's proved, his credentials at AlphaTauri, at RB for the previous 4 years of his career, I think he's got enough stock in and around the paddock that he would get a seat elsewhere. He's obviously got backing by Honda, and Honda have come out and sort of said that they're happy for him to be at Red Bull, but eventually they might like him to be at Aston Martin. So I think he'll be okay. I don't think it will ruin his career, and I think it's actually just a good opportunity for him, and also hopefully for Liam's sake, just a good opportunity to reset and just build experience.
Yeah, no, you're right there in that Tsunoda does have a bit of a get out of jail free card considering Lawson's performances at the start of this season. Now, don't get me wrong, I am also in the camp of this move was made far too soon, but I can imagine it would have happened later in the season or at the end of the season anyway. But two races to show yourself obviously isn't enough, but the two performances that Liam did put in were horrific. So it does give Tsunoda, especially for his first few races, a bit of an easy ride. But we'll have to wait and see how easy that ride is once he steps into the car and has to try and drive that thing. Because at this point now, it's not the Red Bull car anymore. It is the Verstappen.com racing car, because of how tailored it has been made towards him, and all the upgrades coming in ever since 2021 have all probably been, for Max's taste. And so anyone who gets into that car is going to struggle because of how unique and strange his driving style is. But if you think of drivers on the grid with odd driving styles, Tsunoda is another candidate to sort of fall under that umbrella because, especially when defending, and that was something that Lawson really looked to be struggling with, was defending the cars that were slower than him behind, but they could just make it pass pretty easily because he was just driving that car on eggshells, pretty much. And Tsunoda is an excellent defensive driver, and so hopefully he can use his skills and combine that with the car. But do we think Tsunoda will last the whole season? Can we see Yuki Tsunoda competing for Red Bull in 2026, Amy?
That's such a tough question. No.
Wow.
I hope so, but no. This was my prediction at the beginning of the year is, oh my God, how many times has it happened since Daniel Ricciardo has left? They've given a junior driver a chance. Other than Perez, you've got Pierre, Albon, then you had Checo, and then you've gone with Liam, and now look at Yuki. It's like it's cursed, and I think until they prioritise the team rather than Verstappen, I think it's always going to be like that, and we spoke about it briefly before. What I think Red Bull actually needs is a senior driver. I think, they've tried with the juniors. They have a whole junior team to be able to bring them up, and it's not working. So what is the point in having a junior team when they're not excelling because you're just prioritising one driver, which makes total sense because it's Max Verstappen. However, what is the point in a junior team and junior drivers and a junior academy, because they've got so many of them? And I think it would take the likes of, I've said this as my shock prediction, that Carlos Sainz will end up at Red Bull by the end of the season. And I think it takes someone like that, a driver who's got so much calibre that actually could bring the fight to Verstappen. I think there's probably maybe only 5 drivers on the grid that could do that. Lewis, Carlos, Charles, Lando, George, Oscar. 6.
Not Fernando either.
I think he might be a bit too old to actually bring. I think he'd be able to compete, and I think he'd do well in that Red Bull.
I mean, it's not been a good start to the season for him. As much as I love Fernando Alonso, it has been a pretty tough watch so far, especially with how competent Stroll's looked in the first 2 races. I mean, he's done really, really well to creep into that spot in the Drivers' Championship, very high up. Yeah, I
seen a TikTok about Formula 1.5 standings, which take out basically the top 4 teams.
Yeah.
And Lance Stroll's actually second in that. It goes Alexander Albon and then Lance Stroll. So he's doing well. But yeah, like we were saying, like Fernando Alonso, I'd love to see it. With Max Verstappen, they're so similar, like the personalities and just the way they are and how they drive. But I just think he's past it to actually properly compete with Max. I think he'd cope better than probably most of these rookie junior drivers at Red Bull. But if I had to go for anyone who makes the most sense, obviously you've got Charles and Lewis. They're not going to move from Ferrari now, most likely, especially Lewis. Charles, I think if we want to get really shocked, I'd bring
Charles would
into
never
it.
jump ship. Never to Red Bull, I don't think. If Charles were to leave Ferrari, I feel like Red Bull would just be offensive. I mean, it would be blockbuster, and I'd love to see it happen, but...
I don't know. I think he gets sick of that Ferrari team sometimes. You know how you hear him on the team orders? But that was just I don't think you would see either of them. You've got Oscar and Lando, who have both signed very long contracts. Obviously, Oscar, just before Australia, signed for McLaren for another multi-year contract. And, of course, Lando's on that too. So... even though I could probably see Oscar go into a Red Bull, I don't think it'll be anytime soon. And then, of course, George and Antonelli. Now, George, I think if he hasn't had this start to the season that he has, I would absolutely rate him going to Red Bull. But
he's not signed a contract yet, has he, George Russell? No.
But I think it's a very promising... I was thinking Mercedes coming into this season, it's going to be like every other season where they have a few good odd races, and also he's the leader and everything's going to get piled onto him. And now I believe that genuinely George Russell is going to lead that team and bring them back to where they need to be for 2026. So therefore, and I don't think Antonelli's because he's so young, so they're the top 6 drivers, I would say, and I can't see them going. Therefore, who's the next best one? It's Carlos Sainz. It has to be all day long. And I feel like you probably would want to bring someone's name up who should have gone to Red Bull.
I actually would say Alex Albon, maybe as well Pierre, but I think mainly I'd say Alex Albon just because, well, obviously you look at him how he's doing against Sainz. I know it's obviously very early, and Albon's been at the team
it's been an incredible start for him though, really, really.
Yeah, and also that relationship between him and Red Bull is still really good. Unlike Pierre, who I would maybe throw as one of those other drivers who would Pierre and Esteban, who may be those other second drivers that would maybe fill that seat as experienced and quick. I think that Alex is probably the one with the best relationship, probably the easiest to work with alongside Max. And I think that Alex, apparently they went to try to get him over the line in the winter and stuff like that, which apparently were rumours, and he rejected it and stuff. So I'm not sure how likely he would be to do, especially if Williams continue their upward trajectory, and he looks like he could potentially establish himself as team leader. But I think that would be a good move for Red Bull. Obviously him or Carlos or Pierre or even Esteban. I know Esteban, there's obviously there's sort of...
He and Verstappen together.
That's sort of
the
vibe around him is obviously a bit different. But I actually think he's professional enough to be able to do a good job in that second seat.
I mean, you spoke about with Williams is that Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz, what a great lineup. If Red Bull were to come in, they'd probably be more likely to give up Alex, even though he's done so much for the team. But more so just because Carlos is such the sponsors. He's brought Santander to Williams, and I think they tried so much, they've paid him so much to get there, that why would they want to get rid of him straight away to a team like Red Bull when there's also Alex, who's just as good at who they could have. I think they could replace Alex at the minute, but I don't think they could replace Carlos Williams.
I'm not sure, because I do also feel like with Williams and Alex, even though I do also feel like they would maybe be a bit more open to letting him go, I also do feel like there's a little bit of a feel-good story that I think they're trying to buy into it. It feels a little bit like how Lando is with McLaren, that Alex is with Williams. And I think Alex actually will probably have quite a lot of loyalty to Williams, even though I think he still obviously has a good relationship with Red Bull. I think because they gave him that second opportunity in F1, and I think they could potentially back him as a team leader, I think he will be quite loyal to them. But one thing I wanted to discuss is, do you think that this whole debate maybe throws up a bit of a dilemma for Red Bull in terms of developing their car from 2026 onwards? Do they make it more accessible for other drivers and maybe prioritise the Constructors' Championship? Or do they prioritise the Drivers' Championship and go for Max? Because if they don't prioritise Max, he might get offers from, say, Aston Martin, who will prioritise him. Do you think it throws up a dilemma for them? I mean, this is certainly an eye-opening experience for them. I wouldn't be surprised if they were to make subtle steps in making the car more drivable for someone that isn't Max Verstappen. I mean, this season theoretically doesn't really matter. In the grand scheme of things, we've got new regulations coming in next year. The cars are going to be totally different. I mean, who knows how quick Red Bull will even be next year? Who knows if people will even want to go to Red Bull next year? Because we've had regulation changes in the past where Red Bull have looked unstoppable. Say 2013, we go to 2014, Vettel can't drive the car; it's undrivable. He's meant to be the prime of his career, and Red Bull have done that on a number of regulation changes. They weren't very quick in 2018 after the halos came in, although in fairness the car was very quick around low speed circuits where aerodynamics was more important. But I mean, even 2022 was a bit different. But they did get off to a pretty slow start.
It was a slow start.
It wasn't. I mean, obviously they went on to be by far the dominant team of this set of regulations, but it was quite a slow start. And
this is a Newey-less Red Bull as well.
True.
This is a completely uncharted territory for the team, and he's been there since day dot, basically making these cars as wonderfully quick as they have been in the past. And now they are going into 2026 with potentially no second driver. Max Verstappen, who is probably losing his interest in the sport by the minute with every teammate that keeps getting sort of fed to him, which he just chews them up and spits them out again. And then it's also, like I said, no Adrian Newey. And it's so at what point did Red Bull not become the place where people want to go? Is it a case of Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin, Williams, Mercedes will they become more attractive offers for 2026? I mean, only time will tell, of course, because we don't know how quick each car is going to be ahead of next season.
I think if I was an F1 driver, let's say I'm up and coming F2, and I got an offer from, let's say, every team, Red Bull wouldn't even be in my top 5.
It's kind of like Man United at the moment, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like, it really is a case of
drivers' careers, it ruins players' careers.
And drivers will go on to then perform better once they've left the team. Look at Gasly, look at Albon. It's telling. I mean, okay, maybe not Ricciardo technically, but well, Renault was an unbelievable stint for him. So, but that was a bit of driver and team, I'd say there. But look, it is such a crazy situation to get our heads around, and I mean the overall takeaways are that 2 races is not enough time for Lawson. Was not enough time for Lawson to sell in. I don't think it should have been 2 races at all. I don't think he should have do you know what I mean? So I think it is reversing that decision that should never have been made in the first place. But even still, I mean,
no, I get what you mean.
Liam Lawson came across as a very, very confident guy, and then you were talking about Craig Slater saying that he is completely changed. Yeah. But I do think he'll go on to have a strong season now with VCarb. I feel like Hadjar could give him a really, really good test, and if Hadjar beats Lawson convincingly, I mean, could you imagine that? That would be the end of his career.
That would, yeah.
But there's definitely legs to Lawson's F1 career because he'll have more experience than anyone coming through F2, obviously. And he is quick. He has demonstrated that he is a very, very solid driver. And wherever he goes, he usually makes an instant impact. I mean, we were talking off air, Lawson, in all the junior series he competed in, he won, within the first race weekend that, they had on the calendar. And, of course, a really, really quick start with VCarb, back last season. And I
mean, there's a reason he got that Red Bull seat.
Exactly.
There's a reason he got it over Tsunoda. Obviously, there's stuff off the track that maybe came into it as well.
Yeah.
But there was a reason he got it because he was quick whilst having relatively inexperience compared to Yuki. He was still pretty similar. I know he was, whitewashed in qualifying, whatever. But
in a car that wasn't great either.
Yeah, I think he showed that he definitely is somewhat comparable on a level to Yuki Tsunoda, and having so much less experience, that was obviously why I think Red Bull promoted him. They thought he had that more potential, and that's maybe why they are protecting him with this move, and maybe, as you said, Jamie, scapegoating Yuki Tsunoda. They do have this belief around him. So I think he'll go into that RB, and I think he will beat Hadjar. I think obviously Hadjar's had a really good start, but I think Tsunoda still had the measure on him, and I think that Hadjar wasn't as close to Yuki as maybe Lawson was to Yuki last year. So I think it might be a slow start when he gets back into that RB seat. I don't see Japan being a great weekend for him.
He's got to build his confidence back.
I think he'll build it slowly. I think I look at Pierre when he went back to Toro Rosso up against Daniel Kvyat. And what the first few weekends were a bit slow, and then eventually built up to the level that we saw Pierre later. What's that podium in Brazil at the end of the year, and there was other strong performances like Mexico. So I think that it will take time for him to get back into the rhythm, but once he gets back into that rhythm, and if he performs at the same level he was last year and then builds upon that, I don't see any reason why he can't rebuild his career.
Spot on, to be honest. Okay, now this wouldn't be an episode of Chef One if we didn't have some predictions now. So to sort of wind up the episode, let's just do some quick fire ones. Now these won't be official ones that go towards our points at the end of the season, but if I just throw some at you and some yes or no's, maybe with an accompanying sentence. But we'll start off with just with how Yuki will get on at Red Bull. So do we see a race win on the horizon for Yuki Tsunoda? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Do we, I mean this season?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to say podium, but of course that sort of adds to it.
No.
How many podiums? Are we talking more than 5 podiums, maybe?
I'm saying
5 max.
3.
Yeah.
Three, one race
win. 3 podiums and then one race win.
3. I'm happy with 3.
Any pole positions?
Yeah, actually, I think his qualifying.
It's probably his best feature, isn't it? Really.
Okay, well, resounding success for Tsunoda anticipated so far, and will he keep that seat at the end of the season?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm gonna stick with what I said. No.
Really?
I
I
know, but I've got a prediction that Carlos Sainz is going to end up there, I'd be stupid to say no.
Putting all your eggs into one basket.
We've got to go something different. But I just want to say, good luck, Yuki.
Yeah, we love you.
You could do this.
And good luck, Liam, as well. Good luck, Liam, as well,
Yeah.
because that's no doubt an easy mindset to be in. Seb's just grimaced at me there.
I did not.
I did.
But yeah, that just about wraps up this episode for today. If you like what you see and you are new to the channel, then do please click that subscribe button, because we've got loads of content coming the way as the season progresses. Like I said at the start of the video, we have got a website now which you can contribute to if you'd like to join the team. Do make sure to fill out the Google form linked in our description with some contact details, please, as well. They are very, very important. We're already getting some interest in it, so make sure to snap up your position before it is gone. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much to Seb and Amy for joining me this afternoon. And we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.